Matt Ryan and the passing game saved their best performance for the visiting Lions as the Colts held down the fort at Grand Park on Wednesday, but at what cost? All that and much more on this episode of Locked On Colts. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Colts fans, thanks so much for tuning in and making us your number one listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Arthur, and I'm joined, as always, by my partner, Zach Hicks. For anyone who's new to the show, you know us from horseshoehuddle.com. I'm also a credentialed member of the Colts media, bringing you the scoop from camp every day and from the facility during the season. And I'm also a member of the PFWA. Zach, go ahead and tell our new friends a little about yourself.
Oh, shucks, man. I keep having to say this every single day. But no, I'm a big film nerd. I've made my mark in the Indy area through Stampede Blue with SB Nation and picked on with Horseshoe Huddle through Sports Illustrated with Jake here in the past year. Before that, I was a big draft guy. I did a lot of stuff with Draft Wire, Cover One, worked with Locked On in the past. And I'm sure you guys see me on Twitter. Again, I'm the snarky guy on there. So I kind of fit in pretty well with the indie stuff. I think it's a good fit for me. So I'm sure you guys have seen me out there.
It is a cast of characters for sure, but we love you guys. So Wednesday was the first of two joint practices between the Colts and Lions, and boy, did the Colts want this one. The offense and defense, they perform simultaneously on different fields, so I can only watch one group at a time.
Right.
So I watched the offense today. But from what I heard from some of the other guys, Lions reporters as well, the Colts defense looked pretty good too. I guess the Lions offense has done well against their defense throughout camp, but they kind of hit a bit of a buzzsaw against this Colts defense. But anyways, we'll get to that in a bit. But today we'll just kind of go over the news and notes and tell you how things went down for the Colts offense. Zach, very unfortunate news to start out with. We'll get the bad news out there first. Rookie tight end Drew Ogletree, who you guys have heard us talk endlessly about all summer. He went down during 7-on-7s today with a non-contact injury. And as of about 30 minutes ago, it's being reported that it's a season-ending ACL injury for Ogletree. We going into camp, we assumed he was tight end 4. He's honestly looked like probably the most complete guy out there. You could argue even against Mo Alley-Cox, and really has vied for that tight end 2, tight end 3 spot. And so, unfortunately, a promising rookie year is over before it could really begin.
Yeah, this changes so much from the stuff we talked about. And just to start off this whole conversation, I mean, shout out to Joel A. Erickson, who broke this news. I always like to give credit to the reporters who break the news. He broke the news about the ACL injury. It is very unfortunate. Drew Ogletree has had a great camp from everything that you said, from everything I've seen from other people. And this is a guy who, coming into OTAs, like you said, was tight end 4, and we're talking a 6th-round, 24-year-old coming into camp as, tight end 4. And by all accounts, I mean, he had at least moved up to tight end 3, maybe the tight end 2. And like you just said, there's been moments where he's looked like tight end 1. He was running with the first team for a lot of camp. Looked good in the first preseason game against the Bills. Honestly, I didn't put it in my film stuff, but Mo Alley-Cox didn't play too much, but outside of Mo Alley-Cox, he looked like the best blocker of all the tight ends as well. Like, looked really solid there. And he was playing so well to where we were at the point where we're saying 4 tight ends for this roster was an absolute lock. Like, we did it. We just did our whole podcast yesterday about how going through the locks at every position, tight end was a lock at 4, which is rare. Most teams don't roster 4 tight ends. But Drew Ogletree was playing so well that we were convinced that he was going to make this roster. So, what they say, this is a minor setback for a big comeback. But when you're a 6th-round pick in the NFL, your chances of making a roster and making a career for yourself in this league is so low, to where you add on that he's 24, you add on and now an ACL injury. It's going to have to defy all odds for him to make it in this league. But he seems like a player who can defy those odds, a player who had a great camp and can come back from this. So I don't want to bury him right now, but this is just a tough injury. And it's just the unfortunate part of football, like we can always cover it from like, cut this player, that this player sucks, this player is great and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, these are human beings, and Drew Ogletree is a human being whose livelihood is on display every single time he steps out there. So tearing an ACL this early into his career is tough, but again, he seems like a player who could bounce back from it. It just sucks, man. It's the worst part about this sport is when you see guys who you want to see succeed in this league go through this adversity. But hopefully he can bounce back from this and come back stronger next year. It just sucks, man. It sucks.
Yeah. And, since he can't be playing, obviously, you mentioned he seemed like a good guy. He seems like a very bright young guy. I think Nate Atkins wrote a feature on him in Indy Star, and I think it's still Nate's pinned tweet if you guys want to go check that out for a little more background on Ogletree. I thought it was really kind of touching today when he was down there. Frank Reich was immediately out there, and then Michael Pittman, Desmond Patman, and Paris Campbell all kind of surrounded him. And Paris Campbell, who's been through everything, he was down there and just couldn't have been a better guy to give Ogletree words of encouragement in that moment. So he'll I'm willing to bet on him, coming back. But yeah, it's really unfortunate. Some of the other stuff, some of the other odds and ends from camp today. Guys who are out: Isaiah Rodgers remains out with a concussion. Dennis Kelly remains out. Kiki QT is out. JoJo Doman, second straight day. Armani Watts was out again. Chris Williams, Anthony Chesley, and Will Redmond. No big shockers there. All those guys we kind of already knew about their injuries, or they've been out. So.
Yeah, obviously you want to see the guys in these joint practices, but again, at the end of the day, it's off-season stuff. You don't want to force guys out there, even if it's minor stuff. Like Chris Williams, for instance, he's out of that boot. He's been out of the boot for a couple days now. You still don't want to force it because at the end of the day, it is just the off-season, it is training camp. But hopefully those guys can get back soon because, like we've been saying a lot, these joint practices are the biggest, practices of the season. It's the most important stuff of the year. So you want to see these guys out there and hopefully guys like Doman or Cootie or Chris Williams, they can get back out there because they're probably making the team or they could make the team, but you want to see them solidify that against the Lions this week.
Yeah, without question. And of course, with joint practices, things get a little spicier. The Colts have other teams in for joint practices pretty much every summer nowadays. The Lions, they've got a real gritty, hard-nosed head coach. Although if I saw something correctly, he did not want fighting going on. But it's naturally going to happen. There were a few dust-ups today. There weren't any big all-out brawls. But there was a big-ish one during special teams. Someone got hit close to the sideline, and then the biggest one was Michael Pittman Jr. Big shocker. Yeah. But he didn't. This wasn't him being, sensitive or nothing. Like Deshaun Elliott threw him down after a play was well over. He didn't need to do it. He could have just wrapped him up in a hug, like most guys do. But no, he threw him down. Pittman won't take that if his Colts teammates do that to him.
Nope.
So he had something to say. Quentin Nelson was immediately there to back him up. And then things started to die down. And then here comes Jeff Okuda, hey, wait, guys, I didn't get to talk my part. Pushes Pittman as everything's already calming down. And then both sides come in and just, yeah. Luckily, it didn't really get too rowdy. It was mostly guys just jawing at each other, the entire team. Yeah,
So not to take up too much time here, but this reminds me of a couple years ago, the first time I ever made out to Indy camp. Me and my wife drove out there for, it was like a 12-hour drive for us, right, from Virginia out to Indy. And I was going out there scheduled to watch the Browns and Colts, joint practices and stuff. And I actually left a day early because me and my wife, being the young couple that we are, we missed our dog. So we went home early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know how it is. It is how it is.
Been there.
But I remember on the drive home, I had Jake's tweet notifications on. This is obviously before we were working together. And I just remember seeing fight.
Yep.
So it actually shows a little bit that this team has matured over the years to where that Browns practice in 2019, I just, again, I remember I wasn't there, but I remember seeing from you that like it was fight after fight after fight after fight. Now it's like the fight starts, and then you have guys like Quentin Nelson, who was young back in 2019, a young kid who would probably want to fight, now separating the fight, or Ryan Kelly separating the fight, another guy. And I'm not saying that if you want to get into a fight, you're this immature kid or anything like that, but maybe it shows some growth that this team is doing, where it's like it's not fight after fight and going crazy. It's okay, these skirmishes just start for a second and then they kind of separate.
Yeah, it's definitely good because those Brown sessions were ridiculous. That second practice, they couldn't even finish it. Like they couldn't even get through a simple punt drill. Like they just kept fighting. It was crazy.
Yep, and that was the one I missed. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, lucky for that. So they were fighting on the field, but sometimes you got to fight for a job as well. And that's when you got to bring in LinkedIn, guys. As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Personally, I've had to look for job candidates to fill positions before, and it can be a huge pain. It could just be a relentless process, but not with LinkedIn Jobs. They make it really easy. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so that your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Because if you've got a filter and you can kind of weed people out, that saves a lot of time. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Zach. So like I mentioned, pretty much just watch the offense today. That was one-on-ones featuring the receivers and tight ends versus the defensive backs, and then offensive linemen versus defensive linemen. So yeah, just kind of starting with the linemen. Honestly, I thought the Lions defensive linemen did really well. It's a really strong, powerful group. Aiden Hutchinson looked the part. He's really quick. Watching him in person, he's really quick. He's got some counter moves. He's especially got this spin off of a blocker. People have a spin move when they're getting up to the blocker to avoid him, but he's got a nice spin to get disengaged. So I thought he looked really, really good. Aleem McNeil, early draft pick from last year, I think. That dude is strong. He was pushing dudes back like way into their zone. So I liked what I saw from him. There were some Colts offensive linemen that did all right in this. I think Jordan Murray got Hutchinson on one, and Quentin Nelson looked pretty good, of course. But yeah, it was a decent looking group on both sides.
Yeah, no, I'm excited that Danny Pinter got exposed to a player like Aleem McNeil. I think
sure did.
Yeah, but that's big for Danny Pinter. Like, even if he's losing those reps, it is exposing him to powerful interior defensive line. Because Danny Pinter, to me, at right guard, it's an interesting fit because Danny Pinter is so athletic and so flexible that he's a guy who he can reach every second level block. He can pull, he can move. But when it's down in that nitty gritty, when it's that one-on-one, when it's that power v power, that's where he struggles because he's just a smaller guy, and it's weird to say like this 6'3", like 300-pound guy is a smaller player. But
he kind of is. Yeah,
he kind of is, he probably fits better as a center than for most teams, but for the Colts, he's going to be this right guard. So being exposed to a player like Lee McNeil, where he has to kind of learn to adjust to that power, where you don't have to always win. You can have ugly wins, where the guy drives you back a couple yards, but if you re-anchor and you kind of just settle yourself after a couple yards, you can still win that rep. So being exposed to a player like Lee McNeil, who McNeil doesn't really have that many moves right now, but he's so naturally powerful that he's going to drive you back. That kind of shows Danny Pinter that, you can win ugly. You can be driven back, but you can, as long as you hold yourself at that last point or whatever, you can still win the rep. So that's why these joint practices are so important. You can see a guy like Danny Pinter learning from Lee McNeil, where it's like, okay, I need to win ugly sometimes, and that's good for him.
Yeah, so that is the unglamorous side of offense. Right. Now, it was all glamour on the offensive side of the ball today for the Colts. This is the best Matt Ryan's looked so far. He was 10 of 12. Whatever he wanted to do, he was able to do it. And one of the best parts of this was the Colts were working in the red zone today from about the 10-yard line. And we've seen them struggle before against the Colts defense. They lit it up in this drill. Ryan had 3 straight reps of touchdowns. He had a really good one to Alec Pierce. If you guys haven't looked on the Colts Twitter yet, they tweeted that out. He found Pierce in the back left part of the end zone with Amani Oruwariye, who is Detroit's top corner, right there. And, they kind of jockeyed for the ball a little bit, but Pierce was able to grab it and get both feet in before he came out of bounds. That was a really nice play. He hit Pittman right after that in the middle. And then Ashton Doolin made a nice kind of competitive catch on the next one. So they looked a lot better against a different defense in the red zone today, passing. We know they're going to look good running, but making sure they look good passing is important.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and pump smoke up our butts here and say that the Detroit Lions secondary is better than the Colts secondary. Like the Colts secondary is definitely better. But I feel like a lot of people will say like, oh, it's just the Lions secondary. Oh, it's just the Lions, whatever. But they have Jeff Okudah, who is a top 10 pick. They have Amani Oruwariye, or I can't say his last name. Say his last name for me.
Oruwariye.
Yeah, you got it there. I think he had like 6 or 7 picks last year. Like he was a good corner.
Good. He's real good, yeah.
Really good. So they have some real players in that secondary, and the Colts receivers came out and they played really well. And again, this isn't some ringing endorsement where it's like, oh my gosh, the Colts receivers are actually elite. After the whole week of people saying the Colts wide receivers suck and we need to add a veteran, now all of a sudden they're great because they beat the Lions secondary in joint practices. But it is good to see these young receivers kind of bouncing back from what some would say was a tough preseason game. Now, again, if you guys are watching this here on Thursday, I'm probably going to do a video, I think, on Alec Pierce against the Bills. I'm not too sure right now, but Alec Pierce having such a great day against the Lions, that's volumes to just how well that he's had how well he's performed in the offseason here. He's not a player who came out from day one as an elite player, like, oh my gosh, this is our wide receiver 1, our wide receiver 2, but he's a player where the Colts have thrown everything at him. So when it came to these joint practices, he was ready for everything that the Lions threw at him. And we kind of saw him perform at really high level. I mean, from everything I saw today, 1-on-1s he dominated, 7-on-7s he dominated, 11-on-11s, like you just said, he dominated. So Alec Pierce, I mean, he's really benefiting from the Colts kind of throwing everything at him. And that kind of, again, it speaks volumes to, Stephon Gilmore is on you every single day. You're kind of forced to get better because you're facing Stephon Gilmore every single day. So then when you face, some pretty good corners of the Lions, it's like, oh, I face better than this every single day in practice. So seeing Alec Pierce have such a big day isn't shocking. And I'm glad that, he's kind of building upon these training camp practices and looking better and better.
Yeah, I actually said that exact thing on the sideline. I was like, it looks pretty good when he's going against someone other than Stephon Gilmore now. Because against Gilmore, he's just getting rookied. Like Gilmore is not letting him get anything. And not that Detroit's corners aren't good, but like he's had this tough on the job training now. He's pretty much prepared to go out and do well. But no, he had like a nice 40-yard touchdown in the 1-on-1s. He just looked really good. Pittman did as well. Pittman caught a little contested slant against Okudah, And when he was done running, it was about a 40-yard gain, and it was legitimate. Ryan hit him in stride. It's just another thing where we see Pittman getting the ball in motion over the middle is going to be a lot of yards after catch this year. It's what we saw the Colts trying to do with him as a rookie. Couldn't really do it as much with Carson Wentz last year, but Matt Ryan fully intends on utilizing Pitt's yards after catch.
Yeah, Michael Pittman Jr., like we said a couple podcasts ago, we bet the over on all of his projections. We're expecting a huge year. But one thing I want to ask you, and I know we're running long on this segment, but just because we don't have as much for the last segment, I think it's okay today. Kylan Granson, a player who today I saw had a couple drops, but I also saw had a couple big plays. What was your kind of takeaway today from Kylan Granson against the Lions?
Yeah, no, he had one of my favorite plays of the day. It was a sevens or 11s. It doesn't matter. It was a tough catch in traffic. But Ryan found him about 20 yards upfield around the numbers, and Granson had to kind of adjust and, pull back as he fell back and caught it. And he's one of those guys that can make a lot of the difficult catches, even though he makes some of the routine ones look hard.
Right.
But no, he's just really heated up today. He had another good day. Like, I think he had a couple catches in 11s from Matt Ryan, and he's gonna get more of a share now with Ogletree going out. But he's become one of Ryan's more favored targets. Like, it's usually Pittman, Mo Alley Cox, Nyheim Hines, and Granson as his most targeted guys each day. And it was another decent day. Like, if you're looking for him to stack days, then I would say this was another positive day for him.
I'm telling you, if he can keep those drops to a minimum, he can be a legit pass catcher in this offense. So that's something to watch. I mean, I'm very curious about Kylan Granson, especially now with Drew Ogletree's injury. But now, we've been talking about all this fun stuff. We're talking about the Colts offense, but let's get to a very serious topic here, guys. You're hanging out with some friends, you're putting back a few drinks, a few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel and while under the influence. That's why police officers are out right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. And now getting from that PSA to something to a little more lighthearted stuff here, because again, you have to throw that PSA out there every now and then. Let's get to some defensive stuff here. Now, I know that you didn't really watch the defense today, Jake, but from talking to people or from anything that you saw, what did you see from the Colts defense against this Lions offense where, like you said, it's kind of been dominating the Lions defense in practices?
No, I honestly didn't. I didn't really see or hear much. I think Stephon Gilmore looked good. I think in general it was the Colts secondary. That kind of had put the stops up to their passing game, because again, I'd heard Detroit's offense had really been getting the better of their defense throughout camp, and so they entered with a little confidence. And then as soon as they hit the secondary against the Colts, it's like, what are we doing now? Like, we can't get anything going.
Right.
So from what I heard, the Colts, any of the Colts people who were watching were like, oh yeah, this is kind of a normal day for the Colts defense. And then the Lions media, who had been used to seeing the offense just cooking every day, were like, no, they're absolutely killing it right now. So that's what I heard through the grapevine today down the sidelines, but not much else.
Yeah.
So
no, the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to you looking at tomorrow when you're watching this defense is we know the Colts secondary is going to be good. We know Stephon Gilmore is awesome. Like, we already know that. We don't need any more confirmation bias. Stephon Gilmore is awesome. Kenny Moore II, a really good player as well. Julian Blackmon, Nick Cross. I think we feel good about those players. But that up front, that front four, not just Yannick Ngakoue and DeForest Buckner, but the rotational guys. I'm so excited for you to just watch that defense tomorrow and just see how those rotational guys do. Because Ben Banigou versus Jordan Murray and Bernard Ryman is one thing, but how is he going to do against a Taylor Decker, if he lines up against those, and stuff like that. So I think that's such a huge part of this, because if Ben Banigou is going to be the rotational Leo this year, that rotational guy behind Yannick Ngakoue, he has to beat guys like Taylor Decker, maybe not every single time, but, every now and then, so I think tomorrow when you're watching the defense, I think that defensive line watching is going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, the one-on-ones from that should look pretty nice, of course, but I really want to watch the 11-on-11.
Right.
Just because that's way more of the simulated game. And since we're not going to see him on Saturday, that's what we're going to lean on. But no, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, what's Banigou going to look like against one of the better left tackles in Taylor Decker and Kwity Paye against Penei Sewell, who has elite measurables and things of that nature. But I think we're going to get a good opportunity for our guys like Curtis Brooks and Eric Johnson to get in against, Frank Ragnow and Jonah Jackson, because with RJ McIntosh, he got hurt and left on Wednesday. You don't know if he's going to be back Thursday. That obviously opens the door for those young guys once again, because Chris Williams is still out. Byron Cowart's been in and out. So I really want to see those young interior guys as well, Curtis Brooks and Eric Johnson. More so in the 11-on-11s, but I'll keep tally of the one-on-ones as well, just because you can see how explosive certain guys are in those situations. Because I mean, it's almost like you're relying solely on athleticism and power in those more often than not, especially when you're a young guy and you're not quite polished yet.
Right. And while we have a second here, we actually have a little buffer here at the end of our podcast for the first time, but do we expect the Colts, and I don't know if so maybe I'm just kind of throwing this at you here unexpectedly, but do we expect the Colts to only bench the starters this weekend, or do we think it's going to be like also some key contributors? Like a guy like Nyheim Hines comes to mind, right? Will Nyheim Hines play this weekend, or like Ben Banigou will probably play a good bit, but like the players who are like key rotational players, do we expect them to play this weekend?
So I don't think that's been specified, but like I've talked to other people about expectations and what we think. So Hines, that's a great question because he's fringe, obviously, but I consider him a starter in his own position. So I don't think we'll see Nyheim. But yeah, like Nick Foles, for example, it's almost like you'll see him probably like the whole first half, and you give Ellinger the third quarter and Cone the fourth or whatever. But yeah, I don't expect all those guys. Banigou, I would think, might play.
He'll probably play a good bit. Yeah, he'll probably play the whole first half, like what you were just saying.
Yeah, because I think we think he's safe on the roster, but he's still another guy that you got to give snaps to. And it's not going to be the end of this sounds terrible. I don't mean it to sound like this, but like if he gets injured, it's not a back-breaking injury. Like, it's not Kwity Paye or Yannick Ngakoue. Like, it's one of your rotational guys.
Ben Banigou is a player where he has seen 100 snaps the last 2 seasons.
He needs more.
You want to get him out there in the preseason just to get some run. So I totally get playing him. But, yeah, no, I was just curious. Like maybe a guy like Zaire Franklin's a good example. To start the year.
I'd start EJ Speed.
Right.
I'd let him play at least a whole half.
But those are 2 guys who, if Shaquille Leonard is out to start the season, they're going to be starters. So are they going to play this game or miss this game? I don't know. It's probably something better for later in the week that we'll talk about. But just because we had a few minutes here at the end of this show, I was curious about. But yeah, no, it's gonna be interesting. This second preseason game is actually great for nerds like us because we love those bottom of the roster guys.
Yeah.
So we're going to see a lot of those bottom of the roster guys this week.
Yeah, so this is essentially what used to be the 4th preseason game back in the day when they had 4. That's what Saturday is going to be. And then it's weirdly out of order. The 3rd game will be what the 3rd game was. The 2nd game is now the 4th game. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see. We'll still have our eyes glued to the field and in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left.
Yep.
But yeah, we obviously are running out of things here. So that's it for us today, guys. We'll be back tomorrow, of course, the second joint practice. The Colts will have this game coming up on Saturday at Lucas Oil Stadium. And we'll probably have some guests coming in for the rest of the week talking with you guys as well.
Yeah, definitely. Make sure you guys are following at Jake Arthur NFL on Twitter.com. Jake is someone who I've had notifications on the last couple of years, but especially this year because he's doing those threads of players and what they're doing throughout the day. So make sure you have him on tweet notifications or whatever on Twitter. You can follow me at ZachHicks2 on Twitter. I'm putting up some more Gus Bradley stuff every single day. So if you're more interested in the scheme stuff, make sure you're following me. Follow us here on YouTube. Locked On Colts Podcast. We are getting close to our 1,000 subscriber goal. I think we're under 200 now. And once we get to 1,000, this becomes my header on Twitter. So make sure you guys are following that. And then wherever you listen to the podcast, rate, review, subscribe, and keep that love up. But I do want to shout out a couple people here. I know Jake got a couple people approaching him today about the podcast. That's awesome. Yeah. Jake's not the most approachable person, so that's awesome that you guys are running up to him.
That's really true.
And then I wanted to shout out one person here, John Davis here on YouTube. You are in every single premiere, every single morning and everything. You are awesome. I can't even wake up for our 6 a.m. premiere. So, John, if you are listening to this right now, you are the best. We love you. But yeah, no, Jake, close us out here.
Yeah, no, it's Zach and I are just so proud that you guys are enjoying the show like you are. It's been really cool for you guys to stop me, people in the media and people I don't even know, telling us that you like the show. That's really cool to hear. We're glad you guys are enjoying it. We enjoy doing it for you. So we'll keep on keeping on with that. And on that note, we thank you guys again for making Locked On Colts your first listen of the day. Now make Locked On Fantasy Football your second listen. Find the intellectual fantasy expert Vinny Iyer, who brings over 20 years of NFL expertise and a unique angle to give you guys the moves that no one else has. Get ready for your fantasy drafts with Locked On Fantasy Football. We'll see you guys tomorrow.